Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm joined by my regular broadcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw. Played 11 seasons for the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. This is the Laidlaw and Allen Report, coming to you twice a week to talk about hockey and other things. And I want to talk a little bit, Tom, coming out of the gate here. I saw a comment from Daryl Sutter, the coach of the Calgary Flames, when asked about Johnny Gaudreau's 100 points. He said, I just don't care about that. And he said, tell me if he's the leading scorer in the playoffs. That's what I care about. And a couple of things about that. I almost feel like he's fibbing a little bit about that. He says that because that's what you're supposed to say when you're a curmudgeon coach who's supposedly only thinking about that. But I found Daryl Sutter to be a caring man about his players, and he knows that players care about those things, that they want to be successful. And I don't know, is he playing a role there? I mean, usually with Daryl Sutter, I feel like he says what he thinks, but if he's not, then I actually feel bad for him if he can't enjoy this for one of his players. And
it's a good point. Here's my take on it. I think he's sending a message to Johnny Gaudreau. I think he's probably talking to Gaudreau and saying, listen, you're playing fantastic. Plus, it's probably the way he's playing him, too. He probably plays him in a way that, is indicative of having a 100-point season. But he's sending a message to him and saying, okay, that's great that you had a 100-point season, but we want to win the Stanley Cup. And for us to win the Stanley Cup, you've got to play even better than that during the playoffs. That's my take on it. But I'm with you. I think he always says what he means, and he means this, but it's a message that he's sending to Johnny Gaudreau.
Yeah.
Herbie was like that a lot of times, too. Herbie Brooks was like that, sending messages to the media.
So, yeah. Daryl Sutter is really a fascinating character. Because he really is, he's this, he seems just grumpy. Yeah. I know, like when he does the post game, when he was with the Kings anyway, I remember this was true. The players would gather around the TV when he'd do his media. That's because they just wanted to enjoy how he, dealt with the media, because he was just so grumpy and so forth. But he's really, not that I know him real well, because he never really warmed up to me. He was not I don't know that he just didn't feel any need to have any kind of unique relationship with me. But I think I was around enough that he knew that I belonged there. But he's not really that guy that you see. Like if you see him with his son who has Down syndrome, he's a very, very caring man. And I know the Sutters in general. I've witnessed, Brian Sutter in particular, give $20 to a homeless guy. I've seen him grab a reporter's bag when he had too many to, help him through an airport. Those kinds of things. Like they're just nice people. But they're grumpy and they're stern and they're
they're trying to put that act on a little, particularly him. He's trying to put that act on it.
But I don't know. Is it really an act, or is that just kind of farm, Alberta farm boy mentality?
That's the point. So, like, maybe your relationship with him too. You're not an Alberta farm boy, so it's not that he doesn't like you, but you just don't fit into his style of doing.
Yeah, I mean, I never had a sense he disliked me. I'm just saying, I just never. You connect with people. You and I connected. We just, for whatever reason, your personality. I never really felt like, there were plenty of coaches that, I had, good relationships with, that we, exchanged small talk. Ron Wilson was one of my guys. Ken Hitchcock I talked to often.
How'd you get along with Tortorella?
I actually get along with him okay. He's a very intelligent man. Like if you, for me, I was a national reporter, so I always needed a national perspective. So I was really no threat. I wasn't going to unearth anything about his team that he didn't want to see in there. I was doing stories on what does it all mean from the league perspective. And so, and he's, like I said, a very intelligent guy. So, there were certain guys that I loved talking to about the league perspective because they had it. So they could look global, big picture. David Poyle was a guy like that. If I wanted to do a story about scoring being up or down, or what it meant that there were no trades at the trade deadline, or to project what he thought was going to happen in a general way, David Poyle was perfect.
Yeah.
Like, he'd been around forever. He understood how it all worked and everything else. And I always felt that way with John Tortorella. He was so smart that if I wanted to talk about how the new rules were working and what his observations were, he could offer some insight that was both unique and entertaining. So I always liked him, and I sort of sensed that he really didn't like dealing with the media in general, but he was tolerant of me and treated me with respect, and I treated him with respect. Like his stuff with Larry in New York with Larry Brooks, I always thought that was kind of a.
Weren't they buddies too? Weren't they friends?
Yeah, I mean, I think they got along okay, but I think that was kind of a little bit of towards being towards,
Yeah, I talked to a young guy who knew him pretty well, a guy that taken in, and we had a conversation. And Torts had said to him, "Well, I'm just not giving those people anything," because he was clearly an act. He didn't act like that all the time. That was him, kind of, I guess, protecting himself and his team from what he thought was the big evil empire of the media, right? So.
Yeah, I know he had some, like he didn't like when a phone would go off during his interview.
Oh yeah,
that was one of his things. Like, have respect, turn your phone off. And
but do you think that was just a way for him to avoid the questions too? Like get the
no, I think it was more of he just he wanted to be able to sort of lord over you a little bit. So.
Yeah.
But
when you talk to him personal, he's that soft-spoken, like dog-loving, family-loving guy.
Well, I don't know. I would never call him soft-spoken.
Oh, okay.
So I would call him dog-loving, though. Okay. There's no doubt about that. And very patriotic, as we know. His son served in the military, and doesn't like talking about his son in the military. Just he wants everything private, but. I've always sensed that he was patriotic. If you remember a little bit of a controversy, although it wasn't a controversy because his players felt the same way. I mean, we've talked about this before, but hockey players in general, unlike, for example, contrasting the NBA, where you have a very liberal player base, the player base in hockey is very conservative. Yeah. So when Tortorella said, anybody that kneels for the anthem here, this was during the Kaepernick thing. This was for prior to the Olympics. Is not going to play. He had full support from the players.
It really wasn't a bold statement.
No, it really wasn't. So that's why I didn't. I wrote it just because he said it and it was different. But I mean, I didn't see that was a very big deal. It's not like the players were going to revolt and say, they supported that idea. So anyway, for whatever that's worth, but I did want to springboard too. Now that we talked a little bit about, I've been thinking about this too because I've said and I'm acknowledged that my perspective on sports competition is different, I think, than the regular, the normal, the everyday fan, and that is that I always can find something. Like, I'm a real big sports fan. Like, I watch a lot of different sports. I enjoy them all. But I'm not typical because I don't dislike anybody. It's not my thing. Like, I don't sit around thinking, well, like if you're in New York, there are some teams you hate Boston, you hate the Red Sox. I never think like that. And a lot of it is even when I was young, I sort of knew I was going to be a sports writer. So that's, part of our deal. We don't root for teams.
Did you really think that way when you were young, that you were going to be a sports writer? That's what.
I knew at a very early age. Yeah, I just knew. I knew I was going to write. And then I thought, I love sports, and I was totally involved. But anyway, I wonder if one of my thoughts about things, like one of the things that, like, I think it's and I'll use this word only because and acknowledging it's a total exaggeration, but it feels criminal to me that we don't get Connor McDavid and Draisaitl in the playoffs, longer. Like they've only been in a couple of times, and like those players are so good. Like I want to see them in the playoffs, like I see Sidney Crosby and Ovechkin. I want to see those are great players. I want to see them in the playoffs.
Yeah.
But I started to think about it, and I wonder if really people even think about that. Like, is it important that the Oilers are in the playoffs from a fan perspective, or only is that an issue in Edmonton? Yeah, do people really care, like who's in the playoffs and who isn't? As long as your team is in, do you?
See, I think NHL playoff hockey is so good and so compelling. I don't think most people care about that. I think it's just hockey. If it was boring hockey, they'd say, "Well, sure, it's boring because we don't have Draisaitl and McDavid in there all the time." But I just think, man, the playoffs come around, and it seems like every series too is really, there isn't many of those, 4-0 series like we used to have in the past. Even if it is a 4-0, it's like when Columbus is beating Tampa, so it's an upset. So yeah, I agree. I don't think that. I mean, I'm like you. I would love to see them play. I want to see how good these guys could be when the pressure's really on them. But yeah, from the league standpoint, I don't think it's that big of an issue.
Yeah, well, it is interesting because I've kind of thought about that. I don't see the, and like when top players get eliminated, nobody's crying in their beer. No. It just because it's really about the team. I wonder if. More so than no, it's probably true in all sports. I was going to say maybe in hockey it's more team oriented, but it's the same.
What about when Vegas gets eliminated? All the great players there.
Well,
they lost last night. Dallas won.
But they got a point. So they escaped that. I said in that 8-game stretch, I thought they could go 8-0. I thought they needed to go a 7-1 because they got tougher games coming up. But they ended up going 6-1-1. So I thought they needed to get a 14 out of 16, and they ended up getting 13 out of 16. So, will that 1 point cost them? I mean, it could. It really could.
Well, 3 points back. 3 points back. They played one more game. They've got 8 games left to play.
Yeah. So that 1 point could end up being.
And Dallas is playing. Dallas playing Calgary, and I think it's Dallas playing Calgary and. Vegas is playing Minnesota tonight. So both those teams are playing pretty good hockey teams.
Now let's try to leave your personal feelings about the way that the Golden Knights do their business, and just and Jack Eichel and their decision to go after him. If you're the owner of the Vegas Golden Knights and you don't get in, is McCrimmon in trouble?
Well, from what I understand, the owner is very actively involved in all the decisions they make there. If that's accurate, then I don't. Maybe he fires McCrimmon as a scapegoat. But I guess George can just move back in. George McPhee can move back into the general manager's position too. But I don't know. Listen, I look at it 2 ways. Obviously, like you said, I need to put my feelings aside about the decisions they made. If I look at that lineup. That's a heck of a lineup. Like that is a good hockey team. But we do have a salary cap in this world, and I don't think they've managed it too well. When you have to have a player Stone's category, so now they're fighting to get into playoffs, and they can't have Stone play. Now he may not have been healthy anyways, but it was well documented that he was playing with the injury he had, right, with the back injury until Eichel comes in and then he goes out of the lineup. So, if I'm looking at the lineup, I'm going, wow, great lineup. But like I said, if you're the general manager of the team, it's your job to manage that cap. And that hasn't been done. I don't think how you could argue that it hasn't been done properly there in Vegas. But again, if the owner's actively involved, like the stories seem to be, then it's kind of hard. But say it's hard to fire McCrimmon, but this is professional sports, and it's not about being easy or being nice or being kind or being fair. He could go.
Speaking of fair, the way the system works now, with the top seed playing one of the wild cards, the division champion, in the short tradition that we've had this series, it ends up someone who shouldn't squeak in does squeak in, and there's no reward. There's no reward for that division champion because somebody's going to end up if Vegas squeaks in.
Yeah.
With the second, somebody's going to have to play them that won a division championship. That doesn't seem fair.
Well, you're adding all those injured players back into the lineup. So you're adding Pacioretty, Stone, and Riley, right? All out.
Yeah. Well, here's the other question too. Now we're going to have to put up with that phone. We mentioned before about top players and how I'd like to see all the top players get a chance. But what's interesting about the Vegas players is they're all really good players, very good players, stars. But they don't have anybody that's Connor McDavid or Draisaitl or Ovechkin or Crosby.
I thought Eichel was all of those things put together, wasn't he?
In your mind, you talk about him as if he thinks he is. So, but you're the only person who actually talks in those terms. So,
well, but Stone, I like Stone a lot, but he's not. See, he's more of he's not in that category. I guess.
Yeah. No, I think our impression is exactly the same. I think we see a guy who can help you win, that he's going to be your top player, that at the end of most nights, he's been the most effective player. He does a lot of he has a lot of the intangibles that you want from a postseason player, but they don't really have the one guy that, I don't know how many guys are in there. You start listing them. I've listed 4. You add Austin Matthews to that list. I would certainly put Stamkos and Kucherov. Yep. And probably, I guess I'd put Braden Point too. I mean, he's been, he doesn't have the aura, or the reputation, but the production,
Nathan McKinnon's got to be in there. Sidney Crosby.
Nathan McKinnon, from the defensive standpoint, Yossi, and now, like, I'm almost ready to put Makar there. Like, it feels like we're watching Paul Coffey.
Yeah. He's unbelievable. Yeah. He's really good. And then you got Shesterkin here. Kreider scored 50 goals. He got his 50th goal.
Yeah, but I'm still not putting him in there. Just because, we've seen this over and over from the previous guys. We've seen a very good Kreider, but this is the first great Kreider that we've seen.
Well, yeah, the only thing I'd add to that, I hear you. The only thing I'd add is that he has shown how great he can be at times in the past. The problem with him was that he didn't do it all the time. So I guess, to be a great player, you've got to be consistent like that too. But
and I guess the other way I would look at it is, would you trade Kreider for Sidney Crosby?
No. Like him a lot. Yeah, I hear you. And like, listen, a goal is a goal, but a lot of his goals, like he's playing with Zibanejad too. Zibanejad has made some fantastic plays, but they work well together. You can tell they've worked at their game. They feed off each other.
Yeah, I mean, he's had a great season. Like, there's no denying that. I'm not even suggesting for a minute that he has, what he hasn't done has been, phenomenal. But, I just wouldn't put him with those, guys, who've had multiple seasons, and, we kind of, I don't know. Do we go to the arena to see Kreider play? Because we certainly go to see Ovechkin and
Ranger fans definitely go, but does an average fan go to watch Kreider play?
Do you say, I want to see the Rangers coming in because they got Kreider? Now, you might say, I want to see the Rangers just because they're a storied franchise. You love original 6 teams. They've got the cool uniforms.
And they're a fun team, and they're just a fun team to watch too.
I would say that some people will want to go because I want to see Shesterkin.
Yep. Oh, no question.
Yeah. So I would think he would be in that list too. Yep. You want to see Shesterkin because he's had the great season. Now, he hasn't been around long enough that Vasilevsky and Fleury and probably Carey Price are the 3 guys, even though Price hasn't played. But those are 3 guys that, have an aura about them that you want to.
And speaking of that, Susan's stirring the pot a little bit here today, I think. If the playoffs start today, who would be in goal for Minnesota, Fleury or Talbot? Is there a goaltending controversy there?
Well, this is an interesting one. Susan is always drills down right to the thing because we've talked about it a lot on the other podcast. This is why I think it's different. Normally, what you would say in this is, look, you don't give up the assets for Fleury and not start him.
Right.
Because you've given up too much. That he'll get to start over Talbot. But I think the situation is a little different in Minnesota for this reason. Craig Leopold, the owner there, was actively involved in the idea of let's make sure our goaltending is good enough. Let's go out and get Fleury. So I don't think Guerin will feel any pressure to have to play Fleury because he gave up assets. I think they looked at this, they being he and the owners, look, let's make sure we're going to have quality goaltending one way or the other. So I think they will, when you get there, look at the idea of who's playing better right this second, right, which is really what you should do. Now, it's not what happens because sometimes, you give up, when you make a trade, you better make sure that it looks good from the guy who made the trade. But
in Fleury's case, though, you got to look at the body of work, although he's had some downtimes in his career too. But
and I think they will factor that in. If it's close, I think it's Fleury. But if Talbot is playing really, really well, and Fleury is not, I don't think they'll be reluctant. That's my only point.
Yeah.
If it's close, it's going to be Fleury because you're right. He's got that history. He's been there. He's done that. We've seen him do that. Totally. Guys are going to play with a lot of confidence if he's in the net.
Totally. And he's so well liked in the locker room. From what I hear, Talbot's a great guy too. So it's not like he's a bad guy.
So I think that's in play. Where normally it wouldn't even be in play. With most teams in this situation, you'd say Fleury's playing. My only point is, I think Talbot's still a factor. Just because
Susan's on fire, right? Susan's all over the place. She goes to nude plays in the city. She goes to Yankee games. She's got Rangers covered. She's the National Hockey League is her territory. Man.
Yeah, well, and I think she's a lot like Kevin Allen. I think she watched a lot of different sports. Like she's all over the sports, field. Where I think we can't bring you in that tent because I don't think you watched Tiger Woods in the Masters or.
No. Proudly, I can proudly say I did not watch.
Yeah, well, that when people say that, I always have to remind them that when people that one of my thought people would put on social media all the time, like I just want to say that I've never seen an episode of Game of Thrones. They say it like it's like that puts them in such a select minority, and the highest rated episode that Game of Thrones had was only just over 40 million, and there's 339 million people in our country. So that means the majority, 300 million, did not see episodes. Yeah. So
I go to a higher level. I say I proudly never watched. So that's the thing.
No, proudly is the word that everybody uses in there.
No, that's just on me.
Yeah. Proudly, they always go, "Oh yeah, I'm so proud to say that I've never watched Game of Thrones." I didn't go with the crowd. Well, the crowd's not watching it. Okay, that's my point. The crowd. I'm in the minority because I watched Game of Thrones. Exactly. So, I just sporting events I just like, and no matter who's playing, like I could sit down and watch the 49ers play Dallas or whatever, and I could sit and watch a baseball game that that where I don't have any dog in the hunt.
Here's an interesting topic too. There, Pete hasn't written in very much. I don't know. What about going with two goalies from Minnesota? It's been done in the past. Buffalo successful with two goalies.
I think that's astute. I think that's an option as well. So,
I don't like that though. Remember last year Vegas did that with Leonard and Fleury going back and forth. I don't know.
Would you like it better if they say, "Look, we're going to play the two guys and then see how they do, and then who's ever the hot hand will stick with"?
I bet you're a coach for a reason. You're an NHL coach for a reason because you make decisions that are right for the team. I think you go. Like last year, I would have rather they've gone with Fleury and Leonard last year. I would have rather they'd gone with Fleury and go with him and with the knowledge that, listen, if he lets in a bad goal or has an off game, he's not going to get yanked out of there. I don't think players are very successful, especially goaltenders, when they play like that. They think to themselves, geez, if I let in a bad goal, I won't play the next game. It's almost like, go with him. Pick the guy that you're going to go with. Now, listen, if he does terrible for a couple of games and you have to make a change, you make a change. But I like to go with one guy.
So your difference is that it's 2 bad games as opposed to 1. So
yes, exactly. That's exactly right.
I prefer one goalie.
Yeah.
But if they wanted to try that, They do it in the regular season. Like you see teams just kind of go back and forth, and
and I don't like that either. To tell you the truth, I think you've got a number one goaltender. We've had this discussion before about being tired the second night of back-to-back games.
Yeah,
Marty Brodeur played about 90% of the games all the time.
No, I know, but now they really frown upon that. And I go back to Tuukka Rask, if you remember a couple of years ago. There were several stories. I know I wrote one of them where he taught. They played him less games of the regular season with the idea that he would be fresher in the playoffs, and he was just playing unbelievable in the playoffs. And I remember writing at the time. I'm sure the other teams are going to do that. Well, subsequent to that, we've had a lot of discussion about keeping that goalie down to 50 some games as opposed to 65. That sort of thing. So I know Henrik.
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I do also share your this whole idea of that the expectation should be that you're on the second game of back-to-backs. You're not as good. You shouldn't be as good as you were the first game. And I just like, what other profession do you expect teams not to be as good the second day? Heart surgery, police officers,
farmers, military. Yeah, I agree. Hey, last night again, I know what happens with other players, but Owen Power, the first overall pick in the draft, left University of Michigan, played his first game for the Buffalo Sabres last night. 19 years old. To me, that's incredible. I don't think people realize what a great feat that is. And again, I know other players are committed to that age, but you're a defenseman, first of all, where you got to make a lot more decisions. And now you've been playing at university hockey and in the NCAA, and now you come in and you're going to play in the National Hockey League. I saw some highlights last night, breaking up a couple of one-on-ones and all that kind of stuff. And I thought he really did well. I think just the maturity to be able to do that, both the on-ice and off-ice part of it, like that, I don't think people realize what a big thing that. I think back to when I was 19 years old, I was a sophomore in college. There's no way I was ready to play pro hockey.
Yeah.
Obviously he's much more talented, but.
Well, do you think it helped him that he played in the World Championships last year?
Yeah, probably did. So he had that experience. Yep. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he had 2 years at the University of Michigan. Now that I'll just compare that to how many years did Fox play at 3? I think he played 3.
Yeah, probably 3. Yeah.
Yeah. But Morton Seider played 2 years. One of them was in Sweden, and the other one was in the AHL. And then he stepped in. Similar, I think there may be a few months apart, but Seider did the same thing. But it doesn't happen all that often. And to me, it's the confidence is the key.
Because the decisions they have to make out there as a defenseman, and no disrespect to forwards. I mean, forwards have to make decisions too, but much more there is the legwork. Defensemen have to make many more decisions, breaking out of their own zone, reading plays, 2-on-1, 3-on-2. And that, you're right. The confidence to be able to, calm yourself down and read the plays properly. That's the biggest thing to me.
I don't know if they did it. I didn't watch the game last night, but they were talking about playing him on his offside as a defenseman. Did they do that?
You know what? I didn't notice. He's a left shot defenseman. And was there a reason for that? Did they talk about that?
I think that's where they want to end up playing him. I'm not really sure. I just had seen a little note on that. So
we had a discussion on our Thursday show. James Patrick, who coaches major junior hockey up there with Winnipeg Ice, one of the best teams in Canada. We had a discussion about that. How in the past it was much more acceptable to play your offside, and how he really now the game has changed the speed of the game. For instance, if a left shot defenseman is carrying the puck up the ice through the neutral zone, he goes to pass it. If he wants to pass cross ice, that means he has to pull the puck, either go backhand, which is a riskier play going through the middle, or pull it back and then try to pass it. And he said that's the game has changed. The speed is much greater than it was in the past, and that's the problem with playing the offside now. So it was just interesting because I didn't look at it that way until James explained that, but it was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Well, it depends who the passer is too.
Yes, good point. Yeah.
Some of the there are a select number of players. So
there's another guy that did well. Again, he was older though. He wasn't 19 years old, but still, went right from Olympic hockey to playing in winning 4 Stanley Cups in a row.
Yeah, I think he played 3 years, and then he played a season with the Olympic team.
Yes. He was a Bowling Green. Who were the
so-
two in the 1980s? For the CCHA. CCHA isn't even around anymore, right? The Central Collegiate Hockey Association.
I think it exists. It just doesn't have the teams, right? Didn't they change? So I'm not even really sure.
Here's a trivia question for you. Who were they had an all-decade team from the 80s. Excuse me, from the 70s. Who are the two defensemen on the all-decade team?
On the in the 70s? I don't know, but I'm sure you're going to tell us.
Ken Morrow and Tom Laidlaw.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Wow.
I remember the first. I thought I was Mr. Tough Guy, and Ken Morrow was obviously a great player, but he wasn't tough at all. But I remember he came into Marquette, Michigan, the first game. He was a Bowling Green, and he's a big guy, right? So I decided I'm going to go right up to him and I'm going to threaten him right away. I said to him something like, "If you're going to do anything out here tonight, you're going to answer to me." Something like that. And he was looking at me like I was nuts because he doesn't play that way anyway. So it's funny.
Yeah, I was wrong. Ken Morrow was 23, played 4 years and then 1 year with the U.S. So I was thinking he played 3, but he played all 4 years and then he played for Herb Brooks and then he came to the Islanders at 23 and stepped right into their lineup and was an instant impact.
Absolutely. He played a lot. Penalty killing. Yeah, I remember him stepping in, watching him because I was still, when they won their first cup, him playing, because I was just leaving college. And I was thinking to myself, wow, it's pretty impressive. He's good.
Yeah, and they knew he was going to step right in too. Like they were planning on it. So, yeah. It's funny too how the perspective has changed. Like now, if you stay like a third year, it's either a strategy or you're not good enough.
Yeah.
Like now they want to pull you out after at least 2.
I know.
No more than 2. So
it's interesting too from a financial end. Talking as an agent, I'm watching that Aaron Judge now, the outfielder for the New York Yankees, and he stayed in college for 3 years, and how that's hurting him financially now because of his age. Because being a top player like that, he still wants like that 8-year contract or 8 or 9 year contract, I think it was. But the Yankees are hesitant to give him to him. He's now 27 years old, I think it was. So they feel like, okay, what kind of player is he going to be near the end of this contract? So it's the same thing with the NHL players, right? To a lesser extent, maybe, but.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, would you have taken that deal? It was a lot of money. On the other hand, he probably thinks I can get that or more if I go as a free agent. So. He's
certainly betting on himself, right? Because I think he's arbitration eligible for this year, right? I think that's what it was for next year. I can't remember what it was. Yeah, that's a lot of money. They say he's comparing himself to Mike Trout. He's at the level of player. That's the kind of contract he wants. So.
Well, he's one of those guys that if you're in the kitchen and he's at bat, you walk in the living room and watch him.
Definitely. And he carries himself the same way Derek Jeter did publicly. He's a classy guy. He's
right.
Very, one of those good guys. So, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. What I was going to ask you a question about something. I can't remember what it was. Did you follow the shooting we had in Brooklyn here locally?
I did. No, just on the periphery. I know that it happened and that they were looking for a suspect. And I saw some interviews this morning, but I don't know a lot about it. Yeah,
apparently this guy. They sound like he was arrested like 9 times in the past. Had some beef. I guess he posted a lot of stuff online. And we had some beef with somebody or something. And then went on, and apparently it could have been a lot worse. His gun jammed, and he had all kinds of smoke canisters that didn't go off, so it could have been a lot worse. It was almost, and again, this is just purely me speculating, but the people that got injured, it appeared they all got injured in the leg when they got shot. Was he intentionally doing that? Would he not want to kill anybody? Just wanted to hurt them? I don't know, but it was a scary scene because people are crime in the city has really gone up in New York City. And people are afraid. The numbers don't actually bear it out. I listened to an interview yesterday where there's so many people riding the subways that your chances of getting hurt in any way is like still 1 in a million. Just that it seems like it's hitting the headlines, so it's a perception more. People are just scared to death of, and some people don't have cars. That's the only way you can get around is go by subway. So
yeah. The subway is convenient in New York if you're trying to get somewhere because of the parking issues and then just trying to drive, like it's I live in Michigan and I try to explain that to people, but the difference is if I'm 40 miles away from somewhere, it's 40 minutes because we don't have the traffic We have a little bit of traffic in the northern suburbs, but not much. Not like you have in major cities. We had such an exodus of people, during the recession, that the downtown population is really down.
Oh, and downtown Detroit went bankrupt there a few years ago too, right?
It did. Yeah. I mean, the new arenas and stadiums there have, had an impact, certainly. We have three stadiums all within, 2 blocks of each other. So, so the Lions and Tigers and Red Wings are all in one spot. And then the Opera House is down there. And
Greektown is a big thing down there too, right?
Greektown is walking distance from the arenas as well. So I think there's been sort of a revitalization, and there's some nicer homes down there for people who like to live in an urban area that's around the arenas as well. So it's certainly better. I've never really had issues going downtown though.
Yeah. I've liked that area. We lived there. We were there for 5 years. We lived out in Bloomfield Hills, and it was nice. And I worked downtown right by the water. It was Andy's. Is it Andy's on the corner? Is that what it was?
Yeah, I think so. But they, I mean, you probably saw some traffic out in those northern suburbs.
Nothing like here where we are. Here, 95 is a major road that runs from, I think, Maine all the way down to Florida. Sometimes around here, it doesn't matter what. It could be a Sunday, a Saturday, any time of the day. It's just like a parking lot. And it's gotten worse during the pandemic too, because a lot of people don't want to get on the trains. A lot of people moved out to the suburbs here from the city. So it can be nasty. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder, there was some concern about in the pandemic about what, the real estate value of office space was going to be in New York, because so many people are telecommuting now.
But you talk to people now, a lot of people moving back down to the city. Not everybody's gone back to work for the offices, but a lot of people are moving back into the city. So,
yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
So
far we given the traffic report, we given the real estate report. Anything else we just do everything here.
Yeah. Well, let's get back to hockey a little bit as well. I want to talk a little bit about Tampa Bay Lightning. I've mentioned them before. They beat that win against Buffalo on Sunday. Felt like a big win, because they had struggled. They were 6-10 in their last 16 before that, and they had just struggled. And I wonder if they're just bored, Tom.
Yeah. How many I heard great things about the coach there. What's his name? Can't remember his name now. Cooper. Yes. I heard great things about him, but how much more can you say to the guys? You've coached there for, I'm not blaming him. It's just the message. I mean, you can't, we're going to bench guys that are playing well all the time, especially when they've proven themselves. They've won 2 Stanley Cups. So, I don't think.
I mean, we're going to learn again whether or not you can. I mean, it's, cue up the debate. Can you just turn it off and on?
Well, I think if I'm sitting in that locker room and I'm one of the guys that's been there for a while, I'm Steven Stamkos. We've won 2 cups. Certainly hungry to win the third. You know how to play in the playoffs now. You're saying to yourself, yeah. I mean, maybe you're not saying it outright. I mean, what you're saying internally, you're saying, it really doesn't matter what we do here in the regular season. At the end, we're going to make the playoffs. We won the Stanley Cup. It doesn't matter. We can't pick who we're going to play, and it doesn't even matter who we pick.
Well, no, you got to be. If you're going to win the cup, you're going to have to beat Florida one way or the other. So whether you face them now or the second round or first, it doesn't really matter. And
you say that, and you're right. I agree with you. I think you will have to beat Florida, but Florida's going to either play Boston or Washington, right?
Right.
There's no guarantee that one of those 2 teams know how to win too, right?
They do, but boy, I like that Florida team this year. But it is the NHL, where you do upsets are just standard fare, like we.
I think I'm feeling pretty good about Florida's goaltending right now, but Bobrovsky hasn't. Sometimes he just hasn't played well.
No.
The other kid's a young kid, so who knows what happens to goaltending? And that could be the big difference, right? But.
Yeah, and this is the way I would look at the Florida Tampa thing. Well, this is always my philosophy anyway. I always tend to look at it if they played 10 different times over a space of 2 months. Like I think I would have said at the start of the year that Tampa would win 5 of those series and Florida would win 5. Right now, I would say it's 6-4 Florida, maybe even 7-3. That's how good Florida has been.
We had this discussion, but the only thing I think is the advantage is that Tampa knows how to win, right? They've done it before, right? Twice. Yeah. It doesn't mean Florida won't learn, but
no, and they've added some people that will help. I mean, Sherratt as a shutdown defenseman, I think will contribute in that way. And the other guy that I don't think people are giving enough credit to this acquisition is Giroux. Like Giroux is when the game's on the line, he plays hard. You know.
He does, and there's been a lot to prove for him too, right? He's going to want to play well in the playoffs. So.
Yeah, and this is a chance for him, to win a cup, and you like to have. I think it does help to have a guy on the roster that people are kind of pulling for to try to win.
Marty, Susan bring this up. Marty St. Louis, when he came here to the Rangers, and unfortunately he lost his mother during that whole time.
Yeah.
People really were pulling for him. It was a good story. People wanted to see him do well. Right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And he's done a good job in Montreal as a coach too. Yeah. So
that's what Susan's asking here. Does he come back next year as a coach?
Yeah, they've already said that essentially.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they said they want him to come back. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. So
his family lives right here. He lives right here in Greenwich too. So I don't know how old his kids are or whatever, but if that's part of the decision or not.
Yeah. Well, I saw here, and I saw Darren Dreger reported that Paul Maurice has said that he's in no hurry to come back. I think people were thinking that if there were openings, I think people think there could be an opening in Detroit. And Paul Maurice is from right across the border. His wife's from Amherstburg.
That's right. That's right too.
So
I don't believe that though. When I hear somebody say that, I go, I'm in no hurry to come back. I don't buy that. He's got coaching. He's got coaching in his blood. That's a smart move. He's one to look like he's not desperate, right? So he's just not going to jump at the first opportunity. I get that, but
I mean, does he seem desperate? I mean, he quit. He wasn't fired. In fact, they didn't want him to leave. So it's like guys who get fired who are out there.
But apparently the relationship between its 2 star players there wasn't very good, from what I understand.
Absolutely, but they tried to get him to stay. I mean, I don't. He was. I thought he was totally transparent when he said, "Look, I'm not the guy. I can't take this team any further. Maybe someone else can, but I can't. Like, you can't be." Yeah. In fact, if I'm a coach, I'm looking at that and say, "Paul, don't say that."
I know that is probably true. That is true. I never thought about that. Yeah, I'd like to know. Like, is that really what was going on? Did he really feel that way?
I think he did. I think he felt, look, I'm not getting anywhere with this group, for whatever reason. And, I thought he was incredibly honest. Yeah. And I in fairness, I like Paul, and I think he's a good coach. But, I think if I'm a coach around the league, I'm thinking, shut up, Paul. Don't say that.
Where else do you think there's going to be jobs? Think there's going to be a job in Detroit? Job opening?
Job in Detroit, and then San Jose, probably. Bob Bugner might be in trouble. I don't think Arizona. I don't know how they can blame him for that.
That's true. I'm trying to think who else, who's not doing well.
Ottawa, I don't know.
DJ Smith. I think he's kind of like the golden child there right now. Like, he's the up and coming good coach.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. I can't really think of too many places where there are going to be openings.
No. Well, we've had so many changes.
How about Philly? Right. Philadelphia.
Philly,
John Tortorella. Does Mike Babcock get another job?
No.
I agree. And I'm glad to hear that too. I do not like the way he treated players.
I think that's what's hurt him. That there's been too much, that thing with Marner just was a bad look.
Because you think yourself, okay, so if I'm a free agent, do I want to go play for Mike Babcock, right? Most guys, they got multiple choices. They're not going to want to play for Babcock if he treated the same way that he treated those players. It's interesting though. He was in Detroit when Dallas Drake was a free agent and right at the end of his career, and it didn't. Dallas was a unique guy. He was pretty tough mentally. And that he wanted to go play in Detroit. He didn't care what the reputation was for Mike Babcock. In fact, he liked the fact that he got a lot out of the players and, they were winning.
Yeah, well, Ken Holland used to say that Mike Babcock, and it's funny about him, and people have forgotten, but they were sharing a minor league team with Anaheim, and that's where they knew they had some players in Cincinnati when he was coaching there. That's how the Red Wings knew about him. But Holland always said that he never met a coach that was more prepared for a game than Babcock was.
Oh, is that right? Eh?
Yeah.
Will Alain Vigneault get hired by a team? That's a good question. He's one of those guys that you kind of think, like, I think to myself, I wouldn't if I was a general manager. I think his time has passed. I think, here in New York and there in Philly, he just wasn't getting much out of the players. But, he's a personable guy. Same thing as, what's his name there in Seattle, Hackstall. Like, he does well in an interview in the cab. Doesn't know how to coach, but he's good in the cab. But
I think your dream team would have Vigneault as coach, Hackstall as assistant, and Eichel and Steve Duchesne or Matt Duchesne as his
McCrimmon as the GM.
That's your dream team right there. On that note, we're going to close her down today, and we'll be back next week. But if you want to read what I have to say about hockey, I'm at DetroitHockeyNow.com and also HockeyBuzz.com.
And if you want to listen to the radio version of the show, you can go to radio.co at 365 Sports. Again, that's radio.co at 365 Sports. We'll see everybody on Monday.